maybe to summarize, what would you say were the cornerstones of a successful and sustainable film industry for any Canadian jurisdiction?
Yeah, that is the question. Thanks, Tony. I would say, this isn't a definitive list, but it's just some thoughts that came to me based on that excellent question. I would put number one as being, I put down here desire/vision. You know, do they really want an industry? Any Canadian jurisdiction could ask itself, do we really want it? And if so, what are we prepared to do to have it? I pushed for 10 years to create help create an industry in Nunavut. What we ended up with up there was a juried, capped purse, which basically, although it's called a labor credit, it isn't at all. What it basically is a grant. It's basically a capped grant system. You have to apply for it at a certain time of year. When the money runs out, it runs out. And so basically, it's not an industry builder. That's what it is to keep everybody in government knows that you got to be a little bit careful with filmmakers, because filmmakers have video cameras, they have mouths and video cameras, and so you want to keep them happy. So put together a little purse, and you know, whenever anyone sticks their head up, you give them $10,000 to work on a new script for the new thing, and everyone's quiet, you know. And that's kind of, I very bluntly will say that that's kind of what's going on in Nunavut. Please avoid that. Don't end up in that kind of a box. I'm very pleased to see here in New Brunswick, of course, it's uncapped. You come in here and it's just based on your budget. It's wonderful that way. But that would be this desire and vision to make sure that not only the people in the churches, not only the filmmakers, but also the government people share that vision of saying, we recognize this as an industry and we really want to grow this as an industry. I'd say that's number one, and I think without that, there's no point in going on to the other ones. But let's assume we have that one. Okay. The next one would be a feeling of being wide open for business, a feeling of transparency. I put those two together because to be wide open, you have to be clear. People have to be able to go and look up your criteria. Film people plan years in advance. I'm looking at some stuff that I'm very fortunate right now on the strength of having just co-produced Copperhead. I got about 5 scripts there that we're analyzing and looking at and trying to figure out, you know, how to do them, where to do them, all this kind of stuff. And that'll be 2 years, 4 years, 6 years down the road. So you really want to have a kind of a transparency there of knowing what would you get, no mysteries. If we were to go here, how would it work? So I would say that wide open for business. That was I spoke about that earlier when we said we were trying to take the Snowwalker to Manitoba, and they said we want you here. There's $1 million on the table. To me, that was wide open for business. That's now by contrast, for example, in Alberta, they have a system where they're kind of doing almost like a grant system to support local producers. So if you're trying to make a feature film there, you have to try to kind of hook up with one of them, which is no problem. But the way the ownership and everything works, it really works. It sort of works for an indigenous industry, but it doesn't work for a service industry. And so it's kind of got us feeling like, even if you were doing a Western, you're thinking, well, we got to do a Western. How can we do it anywhere but Alberta? That's not open for business. As soon as producers are thinking, gosh, how can we do it somewhere else? You've made a mistake, okay? Then C, and it's not third in importance by any means, but it's training, and there's no point in talking about training if you don't have those two prerequisites, because it's probably not all going to get off the ground anyway. But if you've got A and B, then C, training. It's sort of like a minute or two after you realize that you've got this kind of will and you've got this openness to really build something, then training, it's got to be. It's a huge part of that discussion. And D, and again, this isn't D in terms of importance either, but if you've got these other things going, then I'd like to talk about collective bargaining, which is, I know we've got at least one union and a guild. We've got two in the room. We've got Gary back there and Tim, and we've got ACTRA as well. see Richard Hadley. So let's talk a bit, and Directors Guild of Canada, and I'm a senior member as well. And so collective bargaining and safety standards. Let's make this a career, not a wild summer. That's what we're talking about, okay? Because when I was a kid getting into the film industry, you know, I was a driver, but I had no qualifications other than an ordinary class driver's license. And at a certain point, they said, okay, we've got this fake Brinks truck, which has very poor visibility. We need this thing to be taken up on 2 wheels. We're going to do a stunt. We're going to slide it across a farmer's field. This was up in Toronto. We're going to slide this thing across a farmer's field up on 2 wheels, and we want you to do it. And I said, okay. I didn't want to lose my job, and there was no safety officer. There was nothing. Now this was 1979. That's a while ago. But at the same time, I remember I sort of took my life and probably other people's lives in my hands to do that. Now today, because of the courtesy of the collective bargaining units and so forth, there are protections for people like the young fellow I was then, who say, no, you ain't going to be doing that. You know, there's a certified stunt driver, and that person gets to do practices, and there's going to be a safety officer who's going to check it all out and who's going to say this is okay or it's not okay and all that sort of thing. And also, we talked about training before, and the two go together, because with collective bargaining, there is a training. There are unions and guilds. Training happens naturally as you go up through the unions and guilds. There was a point when people used to think, and perhaps New Brunswick, I believe, may have been part of this, and there was a sort of a feeling at one point that you could have an advantage as a jurisdiction by being kind of non-union. You know, just that anybody could kind of come into like the Wild West or something like that, and there'd be producers who could come here and just do their thing. You know? King's Landing, you know, and you think, wow, cool, and you just happen to live there, and so you get on as something or other, and there you are, as you got a position, and you start thinking, wow, this could be so cool. And if there's no system, if there's no collective bargaining unit that can help you to kind of move up, then there's so much disappointment for so many people who felt like they could maybe do it, and then, you know, lightning doesn't strike twice. 15 years later, and you realize, God, I never really did it again. Or you gravitate to one of the centers. How many people here have a close friend or associate who got their start in New Brunswick, and particularly back when the tax credit was canceled, that was a very bad time, when you would just see the license plate, their tail lights as they headed for Toronto, as they headed for Halifax, as they headed for somewhere else. So you don't want it to be a kind of like the start of a film career where you guys just get to do the one and then they vanish and they take all their wonderful talent to use in some other jurisdiction other than yours. So that was C, and D, collective bargaining. And then E, and this is the final one, but it may in some strange way be the most important of all, and that is consistency. Once you figure out what you're going to do, apply it consistently. Not just this summer or that summer. Again, I don't want to seem like I'm bashing Nunavut. I mean, I'm from there. What's now called Nunavut. It was the Northwest Territories when I was a kid. But in any case, what they've got up there, they've got like a kind of a little training program. Again, this capped, limited training funds. And then, for example, let's say this year they've entered a partnership with the National Film Board, and so that's all the training money has gone to that, and it's all like animation development, whatever. And so people get jazzed about that, and they think, okay, and you've got some young people, maybe they didn't get into this year's program, but they get kind of excited, gee, maybe I'll be all set for next year's. Oh no, next year it's got nothing to do with that. No, now there's going to be another flavor. It's a whole other thing. And that has been, there are some jurisdictions have tried to tweak their programs, so you never quite know what's going to be going on next. And since we're working 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even 7, you know, some of these films take 7 years to develop. So if you can create a feeling of consistency, it's like, I don't know, the Bank of England or the Bank of Canada or something, who try to build a confidence in their currency. So you don't just say, well, this is great, I've got a $100 bill, but what's it gonna be worth next week? Or is someone gonna honor it at this store, or is it gonna, but no, you say, no, it's a $100 bill, it's great, I can put it in my mattress, or put it in the bank, or I can do whatever, and it's gonna be good, like when I wanna cash that. So I say, well, if I can't come and film in New Brunswick next year, well, I'm gonna try to come the year after, and not be thinking, well, I wonder, is the landscape gonna be so different that it's not even gonna be possible. So if it's possible for you to get that vision, going back to, just in closing, if you can get that vision together so that you all have the one vision, and once you've got that vision, apply it consistently so that people gain confidence. You have some rebuilding to do. You cancel your tax credit. Yikes! Public suicide. You know, and it turned out by a lot of good work from some of the people here in this room, Sandra and Gisela and some of the other people. Everybody getting together, you're rebuilding the whole thing, but it's a time to really build confidence and apply that consistency. I hope some of those thoughts have been of some use to somebody. Thanks very much.